And counsel, would you introduce yourself for the record?
Yes, good. Are we still in the morning? No, 12:27. Good afternoon, board. How are y'all doing? My name is Emily Posner, and I'm here on behalf of Mr. Randy Finch, who is to my right, to your left.
Yes, thank you. We have Mr. Finch. Let me just explain the process. I'll read some identifying information, ask you to verify it, then I'll turn it over to Mrs. Bonnie Jackson, seated to my far left. Your case has been assigned to her this afternoon. She'll start the interview process, but let me just acknowledge the folks who are here today in Baton Rouge with us in support. We have quite a few folks here in support. Not everybody could be in the room with us today. We have the Parole Project, Mr. Kerry Myers, Norris Henderson, Jackie Summel, Terry Davis, Sheena Davis, Joanne Finch, Corey Windsor, Patrice McCormick, Lisa Ellis, Carolyn Durham, Randy Tucker, Robert Richardson, Sybil Fox Richardson, Rhonda Finch, Kizzy Tucker, Sherelle Dupree, Kristen Wagner, Ontavious Lee, and Michelle Ladner. And as indicated, not everybody could fit with us. We have three folks who've indicated, or three folks who'll be allowed to speak. Here in opposition, we also have joining us on Zoom, Ms. Donna McWilliams, Ms. Etta Briscoe. Here with us in Baton Rouge is Mr. Frank Moses, who will be speaking at the appropriate time. So let me just read the information into the record. Mr. Finch, you are Randy M. Finch Sr. Your DOC number is 457481. You're seeking a commutation sentence. You were sentenced in Orleans Parish in July 2002 to life for a second-degree murder conviction. I failed to mention that once we hear from everybody that wants to speak, you'll be allowed to make a statement before we turn it over to Ms. Posner to close it out. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Mrs. Jackson. Jackson's question.
All right, good afternoon, Mr. Finch. My name is Bonnie Jackson. Your case has been assigned to me, so I'll start the question for you. How old are you, Mr. Finch?
I'm 45.
And how long have you been incarcerated on the charge?
21 years.
So you were about 24 or 25 years of age when this crime occurred?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, let's go back 21 years ago. Tell us something about what was going on. Were you employed? How much education did you have? So why don't you tell us some information about who you were 21 years ago?
21 years ago, I had a GED. I was employed, had a low-level job at U-Haul. Just really going through some trying times in my life. I wasn't the person that I wanted to be as far as being able to take care of my family and provide the things that I wanted to. I was actually going through a lot of issues with drinking. I was doing a lot of drinking at the time. I had an alcohol abuse problem, drinking regular, drinking daily. I was also dealing with just some anger management issues that kind of was rooted in the drinking. I was also, just a lot of stuff, Judge Jackson, a lot of trauma that came. I had a lot of childhood trauma, a lot of abuse that came from a lot of trauma that came from childhood abuse. So I was really going through a rough patch in my life, and I was trying to, I guess, self-medicate with the alcohol.
How old were you when you started drinking?
Very young, Judge Jackson. I honestly can't even remember. I just, my uncles letting me drink. I remember having large amounts of beer in the house that we would get from different places. And it kind of went on through my teen years, probably just straight on up to 24, to the age of 24.
So let's talk a little bit about the day this crime occurred. first of all, what was your relationship with Ms. Briscoe?
When you say Miss Briscoe, my victim's name is Tamika Moses. Miss Briscoe is her mother.
Yeah. So what was your relationship?
You're breaking up, I'm sorry.
Your relationship to them.
What was your relationship with her?
The victim.
Back on September 16, 2001, what was your relationship with Ms. Moses?
Okay, so I had known Miss Moses, Tamika Moses, just a large portion of my life. I met her when I was about 15 years old. We were together off and on for those 8 or 9 years. During that time, we had 3 kids. She was my high school sweetheart. We had a relationship that just went on. It's kind of off and on relationship, but she basically was the mother of my kids. I was living with her at the time, so we weren't actually married.
You living with her on September 16, 2001? That was a fine.
Excuse me?
Were you living with her on September 16th of 2001?
Well, let me back up. We were going through a tough time in our relationship. Probably a day or so earlier, we started arguing, but I still had things at the house. I was still living there, basically, yes.
And you have 3 children with Miss Moses, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Have other children?
Yes, ma'am.
How many other children?
I have Jawan Finch, who's there with you guys, and I have another son. His name's Gary Tolliver. He lives in Gina, Louisiana.
And they are children of someone other than Miss Moses, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. I also have a stepdaughter who's Jawan's sister, but I was always in her life before I came to prison.
So tell us what happened on September 16th of 2001.
So I returned to the house. We had been arguing.
What were you arguing about? Kind of glossing over that. What was this argument about?
It was a number of different things. It initiated, and let me just start by saying that by no means Tamika's fault. The argument actually started over. I walked in. I accused her of being on the phone with someone. I asked her who it was, and she just didn't respond. Or I can't remember quite what she said. And it could be, Miss Jackson, that she didn't give me the answer that I wanted. The place I was in, I will honestly tell you that I was not handling the confrontation well. So we were arguing about, I had accused her of being on the phone with somebody. So that particular day, I want to say it was my birthday, or it was the day after. And that night, I just wanted to go out and have fun with some friends. So I said, you know what? I'm not having this argument with you right now. And I was wrong. I was making allegations that I shouldn't have made. They were unfounded. So I grabbed some things that night, go out, just partying with my friends, and I left. That day, I did a lot of drinking. I probably started drinking at the time that I left. Drank through the night. I was kind of drinking because I felt like, the argument that we were in, I felt like just dealing with some anxieties and drinking. I felt like, you know what, this is probably gonna be the end of this relationship, or we're probably gonna break up again. I was taking it hard, drinking. I came back the next morning. The argument basically just picked up right where we left off. I just started badgering about who was on the phone.
And then what happened?
At that point, the argument just escalated, got heated. I went upstairs, grabbed the rest of my things, and I, you know, excuse me. Let me say this, I escalated it. This was my fault. I went upstairs, I set down my keys to go grab some things. I didn't see the things. So from that point on, the argument kind of transitioned. Tamika and myself went half on the car. We were both kind of like, we paid half on it to get it. So when I didn't see my things, I guess, I don't know where they were. So as I just scrapped the mission. I said, you know what, I'm leaving. I'm not gonna do this anymore. I'm not even worried about the clothes. When I went to grab the car keys, Tamika had picked them up. That's when the confrontation actually, I made it violent. I escalated. I slammed up against the wall. When I slammed up against the wall, again, I think she was just trying to figure out with me, you know, who's keeping the car. And I'll be honest, it was like a divorce proceeding just happening, just everything coming out in one place. So she put the keys behind her back. I reached behind her back to try to get the keys from her. And that's when I put my hands on it. That's when I went a bridge too far. I snatched her arm out. She didn't let go of the keys. I kind of flipped her over, threw her on the floor. I pinned her down with my knee. In my mind, the keys still weren't out. The keys still weren't out. I stood up. She was on the floor. I kicked her twice, at least twice. And after I kicked her, I realized keys had came out. I bent down, picked up the keys, and I left.
And where was she when you picked up the keys and left?
She was still on the floor. I think she was changing position and laying up against the bed.
Because in your application, you didn't mention having kicked her. You indicated you were trying to throw her on the bed and she ended up being slammed on the floor. But the nature of her injury really severe. She had her liver was completely severed.
Yes, ma'am.
And the vein leading to her liver was completely severed. So basically, she was bleeding to death internally. Why did you just leave her there? It should have been obvious to you that she was in pretty bad condition.
Ms. Jackson, I will say this, that I don't know, I won't say I don't know why I left. I would say that there's no rational, reasonable explanation for why I had just kicked the mother of my children and left her laying on the floor. I have no words for my actions. I know they were wrong. I know that they were.
Where were your children when this happened?
My two oldest were, I think, with their grandfather, and my youngest was, I want to say he was downstairs.
And how old was he?
At the time, my youngest wasn't one yet.
And it was an infant.
Yes, ma'am.
And then after you left her there, what was the next you did?
What was the next thing that I did? Okay, so I left. I got in the car. I just started thinking about what I'd done. I realized immediately after I left, I had gone too far. I realized that I was violent with her and I shouldn't have been. So I went home. I'm not sure where I actually made a call from, but I actually called the house. I actually called to make sure that she was okay, and kind of selfishly I called and I was gonna ask her not to press charges that I knew I had went too far. And basically kind of beg for mercy. But so when I called,
ended up talking to two police officers who were there,
Yes, I did.
caller, correct?
Yes, I did. I spoke to the first officer, and the first officer actually told me that Tamika was at the hospital. He informed me that she was in pretty bad shape. I think he said that, man, she may not make it. And I didn't, at that point, the seriousness of the situation began to hit me that, I'd done some real damage. And I remember asking the police, I told the officer, I said, man, if you're just saying this to get me to turn myself in, I'm gonna do that. I said, but I just felt like he was not being truthful. And he reiterated, he said, no, I'm serious. He said, I wouldn't be as unprofessional as to tell you that she's not doing well and, the otherwise be true. So I hung up and I called back later, just kind of in disbelief, not really willing to accept it. I called back and it was later in the day and another, I don't remember how much later it was, another officer was there and he informed me.
And you ultimately surrendered on an outstanding arrest warrant, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. I turned myself in the next day. Yes, I did.
Well, let's talk about the last 21 years, Mr. Finch. I've reviewed your packet, and there is an extensive list of programs that you have both taken and facilitated.
Recording in progress.
What programs do you think have changed you the most?
It was a program that I actually went into a very, very long time ago. And it was called Making Peace with Your Past. And it was when I first got here, let me say this, man. Let me just say, man, I'm profoundly sorry. I'm sorry for what I've done. And talking about this course is gonna bring me, you guys will understand in a minute, but I took Making Peace with Your Past. It was a prerequisite for the Bible college. It was called faith-based. This course actually helped me to realize all of the underlying issues that I was dealing with. When I first got here, my first inclination was just to hate myself for what I had done. I had taken the life of, I murdered the mother of my 3 kids. And the person who was in my life for a large portion of my life, I knew her mom and I knew her family. My first inclination was to hate myself. I took Making Peace with Your Past, and it helped me to see that I had a lot of stuff going on with me that happened before I even met her. I grew up in a very abusive household. My stepfather beat up everybody in the house, including my mom. I found out that my sister actually slept with a knife. I never knew that. But it was just a curriculum and a course that served as treatment for me. And I realized that I actually hated myself for what I'd done, but I realized that me hating myself was not gonna add to me. So I continued on. I realized that I was not the worst thing that I had ever done. But moreover, on top of not being the worst thing I ever done, I was not the worst thing that ever happened to me. I realized that a lot of my childhood abuse, it's not responsible for what I did. It didn't make me do that. I made poor decisions and I made poor choices and I did what I did to Tamika and I should not have. That was awful of me. For that, I'm profoundly sorry. But I learned in that course that I wasn't the worst thing that happened to me and I wasn't the worst thing that I ever done. And then I realized that I wanted to forgive myself and I wanted to grow. And I realized that course took me so deep, it made me realize that before I could actually move on and begin to build myself, that I had to forgive my stepfather for what he done. before I could start to forgive myself, before I could move in a direction that I could begin to build them from, and before I could be able to right what was wrong with me. So that's one of, if I had to say a course had the most profound and deepest and lasting impact on me, it would have been Making Peace with Your Past.
What programs have you taken to address your issues with alcohol?
Initially, I took substance abuse. It was an eye-opening course for me. I realized that the substance abuse course was largely centered not just around alcoholism and the dependence on alcohol, but it was also centered around just destructive behavior. I liked that class a lot, and I knew a lot of guys around me that suffered with dependency, with alcoholism. So I actually got qualified to teach that course, and it's one that impacted me. Since then, I've continued to be involved in the AA community. I attend the classes here, and I support a lot of guys who are in those, who come to group sessions. We have many that are available. Mind you, I haven't taken a drink since I've been here. I've been sober for 21 years. Because I realized that even then, I realized that alcoholism played a role in what I did.
I noticed that you had been a facilitator in a number of classes. You've also mentored, been a mentor in some programs, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
What would you say your most proudest accomplishment is since you've been incarcerated?
Let me think. My most proudest, for me, I started out being a person who was a taker. I started out being a person who was destructive. And I realized that to stop being destructive, I had to learn how to actually build. And when you're being destructive, when you want to be constructive, you have to take off some things and put on some new things. So for me, to not be a taker and not be a selfish person, I had to start giving back. So I say pause was a huge and a program that I'm very proud of, because pause gives me the opportunity to give back. And it's Prisoners Assistant Warrior Service. Pause gives me the opportunity to train dogs. I train them for about a year, and I donate service dogs to veterans who are in need. It's a beautiful program, and it's not just about training dogs. That is a huge part of it, and that's what I was involved in 24/7. I have 2 dogs right now in the hands of veterans that I was able to donate. It is huge for me because there are people who gave, and I have been given the opportunity to actually give to them. So, but pause also gives me an opportunity. I had the opportunity to speak to at-risk youth, speak to college groups from all over the state, and we also get to speak to riverboat tours and stuff like that. So it's giving me the opportunity to actually give back. So that is huge for me.
I see you listed yourself as a founding member of Malachi Dads.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell us about that and why you became involved in Malachi Dads.
Malachi Dads it was started by a friend of mine. I was one of the founding members. Malachi Dad was important for me. Malachi Dads was important for me because I was a horrible father, to say the least. Malachi Dads, I never spoken to my kids since I've been here. So Malachi Dads actually gave me the opportunity that if I ever got the chance to speak to my kids, if I ever got the chance to tell them I'm sorry, and if I ever got the chance to reconcile and regain their trust and their love, Malachi Dad was one of the things I said, I want to submit myself to this process for that one day if I'm given the opportunity to reconcile my kids, I'll be a better father. So that's why, so being a founding member and being a part of it for so many years, it actually helped me grow as a father, but also as a facilitator and to help other guys be better fathers. So I was a facilitator for about 4 or 5 years. I can't remember right now, but just wanted to be a better father at some point.
In your own words, though, you say that your children with Moses despise you. Those were your words that you wrote. You asked me. Do you understand why they would feel that way? And do you understand the magnitude of the harm that you caused to them? Speak to that.
I realized that as a father, I was supposed to be the strongest person in the household. I realized that as a father, I was supposed to be that pillar. I was supposed to be basically everything I wasn't. And not only was I not that, I actually killed the mother of my 3 children. I took their mother and their father away from them. I took their mother and their father away from them. I destroyed their household. The sad part about what I've done is, in a sense, I kind of made my kids just second-class citizens who grew up. They didn't have a mother and a father. They didn't have a household. We weren't there for events. We weren't there for graduations. We were just non-existent because I did that. So I know that I could not have been a more horrible father, let alone person. I know what I've done was profoundly wrong, and I'm sorry for that, man.
What about the other 2 children not with Miss Mulligan? Do you have a relationship with them?
I don't have a relationship with Gary. I do have a relationship with Juwan. He and I talk. He's a great kid. He went to college. He's doing well for himself. We talk. We don't talk as often as I would like, but we talk. We're a lot alike. It's just awesome being a part of his life because we're a lot alike. And just talking to him is almost like talking to myself. I always tell him that he's a better version of me, way better version of me.
You have 14 write-ups. The last one was in 2017. Tell us about that.
2014.
17, I think it's 2017. 14 write-ups,
And the last one.
2014.
So yeah, the last one. I was at Contraband. At this particular time, cigarettes here at the prison were being phased out. They were still selling them in the store, but you couldn't smoke in the dorm. I was actually waiting. They opened the doors. Security officers here actually opened the door periodically. I had a cigarette in my hand, and in a rush to run in the dorm, I ran in the dorm with a cigarette. So I'm standing there in the middle of the floor puffing on a cigarette, and the security officer calls me. I did it. If I'm not mistaken, I pled guilty because I did it. I was guilty of it.
If you were to be successful, Mr. Finch, what's your transition plan?
Absolutely. My transition plan is, first and foremost, I'm going to be going to the parole project and stay there as long as I have to make a sufficient a sufficient transition and just reacclimating to society.
Where do you plan to live long-term?
Long term, my initial plan, my fiance lives in New Orleans, and my plan was to move there. Also, I have a job offer at a place called Reed Miller. It's a nonprofit. It's a reentry mediation institute of Louisiana, and they have training. What happens is you go in and out inside of a prison setting, and you help guys, you mediate between guys in prison who may have lost contact with their family. So it kind of helps you help them get readjusted to society as well. So that's my job plan.
Gordon, what can you tell us about Mr.
Yes, I can tell you that Randy Finch has participated in a bunch of programs. He's also facilitated a lot of our programs. He's facilitated for Cajun Rage, Living in Balance, substance abuse, T4C, which is Thank You for a Change, and he also do pre-release and Inside Out Dad. He did Celebrate Recovery training. He's a reentry social mentor. He's a certified tutor for academics. And he also participated in therapeutic community training. Recently, he just completed IC3 digital literacy certification. He did level 1 and level 2.
What's his trustee status?
He's a minimum 8.
How long has he been a trustee?
He has been a trustee in since 4/19/2012.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Mr. Dolan.
I have one question, Mr. Finch. There's a letter of appreciation from 2018 from Warden Benoit in the record. Can you tell us about an incident that involved a captain in a time of need?
Okay, so I was living in the dorm. We were all on our beds for count, and captain came through, female officer. She observed a guy who was intoxicated, he was on some type of drugs. When she approached him, he got physical with her. He fell to the ground, she fell to the ground with him. As I sat there, I'm the furthest away. I was at the back of the dorm. And when I see the commotion going on, I realized that she was down. I approached the situation. I realized that he was out of his mind. And he had a clutch on her ankle. He grabbed her. So I just went over. I yanked his hand off of her leg. And I think I helped her up. But just for the most part, I helped her out of his clutches because I think he was on drugs or whatever he was on, he was kind of out of his mind.
Well, thank you for that. I just wanted to point that out. It's not often we see a letter from the warden and the deputy warden for security commending an offender for such action. So thank you. I think Mr. Roche had a couple.
Is there one question? I see that you are a military veteran.
Yes, sir.
What branch of the service did you serve in?
The Navy, sir.
And I see that you are discharged as honorable. Tell us what.
I was discharged as other than honorable. OTH.
To avoid a court martial.
Yes.
Okay, tell us about that.
I was stationed in a place called Diego Garcia. It was really far away from home. And I came home, and Mr. Rozier, I'm not sure. I think I just got really homesick. I just didn't return. There was a point, like after my 30 days of leave was up, I wanted to go back, but at that point, they were all, I spoke to someone and they were already telling me that I was going to incur some sanctions or whatever. But at that point, I just kind of, I was scared away from the situation. Sometime later, I was actually making a right turn. I got pulled over and I got apprehended for it. And then they brought me back to discharge.
You were a very young man when this happened. Tell us how you would handle that situation at the age of 45?
Yes, sir.
How would you handle that situation now?
Mr. Roger, I'm 45 and I've asked myself that question 1,000 times since I've been here. And early on, I used to say that I just would have left, but I realize now that one in my family, I would have got counseling. If I had the opportunity to handle the situation differently, I would have got counseling, and I would have made it work. And just been a more responsible person, been more patient, being more understanding, being more empathetic, and going the extra mile to be a man and be a father, being a responsible adult and a citizen. Truth of the matter is nobody deserves what I've done. But yeah, I would have been a lot more. I would have been a lot more understanding. I would have went to counseling.
Thank you, Mr. Finch, for your honest answer. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Rushton. I don't see any other questions, so we'll hear from those who are in support. Mr. Norris Henderson.
Good morning. Well, it's morning for me. It's good afternoon for y'all. I've been knowing Randy for a while, and I have, spoke with his attorney, Emily, and I saw the portfolio she put together for him. And I assured her that in the event that he is successful with the pardon recommendation, parole, and being turned over to Kerry, that once he left Kerry, that our arms are wide open in New Orleans to take Randy in, to help him with all the wraparound stuff that he needs, either between the first 72, with voters organized, all the things that we need to do to help Randy stay the course. I'm really impressed with his service of, especially with Paul's. And again, what Warren Renaissance talked about, the bravery that he exhibited with helping one of the correctional officers in our time of need. That is something that happens few and far in between. And it's primarily because some folks say it's us and them. And I think in that moment, he didn't see us and them. He saw another human being that was in distress and went to their aid. So I'm here to offer all the assistance that we can, the wraparound services, to help Randy be successful in the event that he's successful today and in the future at getting the signature and parole in the event it happens in that particular order. But I'm here to offer up our services as a member of our community in New Orleans, and as also as one of the leading nonprofit in New Orleans to kind of help Randy do all the things he needs to do, because Randy has some real skills that can help us in our community also. So I thank y'all for the time.
Thank you. Terry Davis. Can we hear from Terry Davis? Can you step up here?
Good evening, how y'all doing? My name is Terry Davis. I'm the first cousin of Brandon, my older cousin. Brandon and I, he's kind of like brother, right? He spent some time at our home with my mom and my dad, along with my brother and my sister. I was too young at the time to kind of know what the reasoning was that he was there, but I know he spent a fair amount of time there. I grew with him, kind of looked up to him, and this time that he's been incarcerated, I've witnessed Randy make kind of the turn to accepting accountability, one for what happened, and two, using this time to be progressive and productive, and bettering himself and contributing in whatever manner that he can to whatever, community that he's a part of. In the event of his, the pardon being granted, I want it to be known that myself, my resources, and the host of family, have a strong support system for him to get through whatever it is that he needs to, and to make the transition or attrition back into society. And I just want to say thank you all for hearing me out.
Thank you, sir. And we'd like to hear from Joanne. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Joanne, okay. And speak up so he can hear you.
I've known my dad my entire life with like ours, knowing the real type of way. I think up until around the age of 10, I know my dad was not always a victim of my mother and family. Childhood thing, I think too much time disconnect myself out of that side of things, but also I grew up with a lot of anger. I didn't know love for it. Age of 19, I realized how that man not only affected me, but affected my father and my brother. I put on as much from one things or as much as I want to put on the city guys, but it was up until I was at my father. I really made a sort of realization of what that no longer my new at the age of 10. My mother was no longer at the age of 10. All of them had so sort of this how what they did, I wrote my they played. At the age of 19, I was able to learn who my father was. I did that. So that we had changed. That man took many different roles, not only to get better as a person, trying to get but other people as well. I say all that, thank you all for hearing me, but I will come home with that chance. Really become a better father, but give him the chance to teach me. So I don't want to say anything, this family.
All right, at this time, we'd like to hear Mr. Frank Moses.
My name is Frank Moses. Jamaica was my daughter. I hear everybody talk about it. He helped her. Prison lady and all that. Who helped my daughter when you meet her again? You know, when grandchildren, every Sunday I would come get them, take them to church or spend time with me because he was just a sperm donor. He didn't do it. And I came and got him that Sunday. All but the baby was 9 months old. He killed my daughter in front of the baby. I had a kid, the boy and the girl with me. And just so happened it started raining. So I came back. That's when I saw him coming out the door. The girl stayed with my daughter. He hit Tamika. I turned around and looked. I thought he just had hit her. I didn't know he would hit her down like that. And I ran to see. She was on the floor. Had a big cut out of her head. In the head. That's when I just picked her up. Took her to the hospital because I know she was in bad shape. His son was 5 years old, 4 years old. His daughter was 6. So with that being the case, baby was 9 months old. With that being the case, to show you how kids don't forget things, his son, which is named Randy Jr., he made a song, put it on Spotify, Blood on the Stair. You understand? You could hear that. That goes to show you how much he realized what had happened. Now here Randy, he talking about how he done changed, how he did it, how he's a better man. He wants to go home. My daughter is in a permanent home. Great. She'll never get out of there. You understand? So how you talk about he changed. He messed up a bunch of lives. His kids never know what it is for a mother to teach her kids anything. He wasn't there. He was in and out, in and out. That don't even count. They know anything they needed, they could come to phone call. That's me. I was there. And because if I had anything, you would never see daylight. Because my daughter won't see daylight. That being the case, I don't want to keep on it because that's not gonna get her back. But see, he wants to date. He's trying to get parole. But tomorrow will be his son's birthday, 9-month-old. His birthday tomorrow. Now that's a hell of a present you want to give him. You know, and he come home, they're gonna be celebrated like a hero, not a murderer. That's just what he is. Call it what it is. He's a murderer. And that the old determined if you think he's rehabilitated and he need to get back out here, or you want to pull the chief back and fix it. No. Them kids will never experience their mother. Never. What is the cause? He didn't want to be there because see, you could be helped for somebody and not be in those. And with that being the case, he didn't have to love for parents, he should have love for his kid. Or stay away. But there was gonna be one nothing because I was there. I didn't stay with them. But they know if they needed anything, all they had to do was ask me. He had to be, no, he never took one to get a haircut. Never told how to throw over, nothing, never did, nothing. If he's supposed to be such a father, like I heard him say it, I don't know what he did for his other kids. I can't speak to that. I speak for my grandkids.
Thank you, Mr. Moses. Thank you so much for being here. Mr. Finch, is there a statement you'd like to make to us before we turn it over to Ms. Posey?
Yes, ma'am. First and foremost, I'd like to apologize to Tamika's family, to Mr. Frank, Miss Etta, to their entire family, because I know I caused them an extraordinary amount of grief. I'll be the first one to say I was a horrible father. I'm nowhere close to a hero. I know what I did was absolutely wrong. What I can say is that I look deeply and at myself, and I came to realize who I was. And I did my best to submit myself to every bit of programming, treatment that I possibly could to become a better person, change from the person that I had been. I made those efforts and I continue to strive to make efforts. I am absolutely profoundly sorry for what I've done. I apologize. to the board, to the families, to my families. For the shame I brought my own family. I apologize to you, the board members, having to sit here and listen to it. I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity as well.
Posner?
This has been, I think, one of the hardest cases that I've worked on. I know it's getting to be late in the day, so I will try to be brief, which is hard for lawyers, but I will do my best. When I went to law school, I never thought that I would be working on a case with an individual who killed the mother of his kids. It's not why I went to law school. I didn't think that this was, I thought I was going to be getting innocent people out of prison. That's what I thought I was getting myself into. And Randy was actually one of the first clients of mine. And I've known him since 2016. And Randy has taught me more about the law and the criminal justice system than I think any of my other clients. Because this was a case where we had to really work and look at, why did this happen? We can't obviously change the past, but we can look to see what when you go to therapy, your therapist says, well, why did you behave this way? And then you have to ask those questions, those deep, deep questions. And Randy has been doing that work. And I won't lie to you and say that that work has ended, because it's a lifelong process when you experience the type of generational trauma that I think he experienced as a child. But only until you start to look at yourself and the past that you've had, as Randy said, where he was able to finally forgive his stepfather, he was able to forgive himself. You have to look at that to determine, well, why did I behave this way? Why would this situation have escalated the way that it did? Why did I have such anger? And I've been so impressed by Randy because he's worked to answer those questions so that this behavior doesn't happen again. And I truly believe that he has worked to heal himself so that this behavior will not happen again, should this honorable board grant his request for a pardon and make him parole eligible. And just today, while we were waiting, I got here at around 8:30. 3 wardens came over to speak with Randy before the board. I don't know the exact titles, but I know that they were some sort of warden. And honestly, that happens every time I come to see Randy. I would come more regularly before the COVID pandemic, but every time I saw Randy, someone would, in a place of power, would come over and say hi to him and introduce themselves to me. And I've been coming to Angola for many years, and that does not happen on a regular basis. Just like I think board member Renata noticed the letter from Warden Vinoy. I've done several of these hearings. You all have met me before. I don't get these types of letters that are in the packet. I don't have someone like a former warden like Perry Stagg telling me, I really hope that this goes well for Randy. That's taking time out of their day to talk to me about someone like Randy. And I think that's reflective of who he has become. And if we are looking at models of rehabilitation and individuals who can take accountability for the worst thing that they've ever done, change, and then not just change for themselves for selfish reasons, but then change and contribute to their community, it is someone like Randy Finch. And I hope that wherever he ends up, I know that he'll continue to impact people. And I just truly hope that he has the opportunity to return to our community as a free person, even though he'll be under supervision if that opportunity does come for the rest of his life. But I think he has a lot to give to the community outside of Angola now that he has given so much here. And I think his history of giving inside of the institution is reflective and demonstrative of the future that holds for him, whether he is here or he is free, that this is the person that he is, and he will continue to be that person wherever he may be. I can truly say it's been a pleasure working with Randy. And I'm so proud of him. Because most of my clients don't take the type of accountability and look as deep into themselves as he has done, and worked not just with training or taking classes, but to do that inner work, to find those mechanisms to make sure that I'm good, I'm grounded, that I'm going to be okay, and I'm not going to impact or negatively hurt somebody else. And I think his disciplinary record reflects that. His institutional record reflects that. He's a Class A trustee, and his service to others via his being a tutor, a facilitator, as well as putting service dogs into the community for veterans reflects that part of who he is. And so, of course, any mistakes that are in that packet are on me, not on Randy. And I would be happy to answer any questions that the board may have about what we did submit. And I think that his reentry plan demonstrates as well that he has a very strong support system. He has a well thought out reentry plan that is put in place, and I know that he will succeed should this honorable board grant him the opportunity to go to the parole board. So I thank you all for your time, and I hope that you decide to commute Mr. Finch's sentence so that he can go before the parole board.
Thank you. You up here today, Mrs. Jackson?
Yes. Mr. Moses, I'd like to thank you very much for being here today. I know that it's not an easy thing to do. And I thank you for being here because your input helps us make our decisions, and these are all really difficult decisions. You know, anytime someone's loved one has been murdered, the person never really healed from that. But there are times where you have to accept the fact that at some point in the future, the person will have done enough to warrant or merit their release. I said, you're going to have to start processing the fact that maybe there will be a point in the future where the person will merit release. And so my advice to you forgiveness is not for the offender. Forgiveness is for you. No. Forgiveness is for you. And I'm saying this because I know it personally. The forgiveness is for the person who gives it, not for the person who receives it. I just think about that. Okay. Understand. Mr. Finch, you had a very good interview today. You've accomplished a lot during your time of incarceration. You've done a lot of introspection. I think you actually grew up in prison, and that's what I see. At 24, 25 years old, you're still very immature. Even though you had reached the age of majority, I don't think that you were a mature person. And you've actually grown up in prison. And some people grow up in prison and they become the worst replica of themselves. And sometimes they become the best. And you've accomplished a lot, and I do want to commend you for that. And your day is going to come, but I don't think it's today. For me, 21 years is not enough, given the nature of the struggle. But I want you to keep your head up. I want you to keep working hard. I want you to keep doing the things that you're doing. Because I sincerely believe that your day is going to come. But today, my vote is to deny because of victim opposition and insufficient counsel. but I'm just one vote.
Thank you, Mr. Roche.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to commend you on all the achievements that you've done during your 21 years of incarceration, especially with your work with the dogs, with the PAW program, and helping disabled veterans get a better style of life. But I agree 110% with Mrs. Jackson. I'd like to give you a recommendation today. With 21 years of incarceration is not nearly enough time of retribution for the death of a human being. I'd like to give you a recommendation of 99 years with 25 or 30 years served. But under current legislation, if I do that, you will be immediately eligible. Therefore, I agree with Ms. Jackson for all the reasons that she had just articulated. My vote is to deny your request.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Finch, you have an excellent prison record. You've got a very good transition plan. You've done some excellent things while you've been in prison. I do agree that 21 years perhaps isn't sufficient time. You've done everything that's been asked of you. My vote today would be to grant your parole. My vote would be to recommend the commutation to the governor of 99 years with immediate parole eligibility. That's my vote. I'm 1 of 5. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Franklin.
The seriousness of the offense really bothers me. But I do think you've done everything you've needed to do in prison. Grown up and matured a lot since you got in prison. And my vote today would be to say Mr. Marabella to grant and commute to 99.
All right, Mr. Finch, you know what the outcome is. It takes 4 like votes. But I'll go ahead and vote. Don't normally do that when the decision has been made. My vote today would be to commute your sentence to 99 years. I believe that we've seen this morning or this afternoon sincere remorse expressed by you. I believe you've demonstrated your rehabilitation through the service of others, and I think you'll be successful. However, you've got 3 favorable votes today, 2 that were not favorable. So the outcome of today's proceeding is that your application at this time has been denied. Good luck to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the opportunity.
Wow. So sorry about that. I'm re-recording here. Okay, so how do we unpack this? It's first of all, I only think that they voted, the last 3 judges voted to commute because, again, as they said, they knew at that point that he couldn't get approved. And I've seen them do this. They do it as a way of sending a nice gesture, sending a message to keep up the good work. And they, as you can see where this is going, his next parole hearing will probably get approved because they basically want to see him do more time. Maybe they want him to do 25 years. Although you never know, because you don't know, there is a new board coming in now with the new governor. So you don't know. I mean, you don't know who's going to be at it and who's not. But it might be a different board, and you don't know what the results can always end up being. He looks like a bodybuilder, by the way. I don't know if he was like that before prison or if it's just like a prison thing. I have the reports here of his appeals, and one thing that I've seen consistent is that his story that he shared today seems to match very similarly to all of the reports, which is just not something we usually see. Usually people make a lot of things up. Now, in some cases, he did seem to downplay a little bit. He said that, I think he said he kicked her a few times. We kicked her at least a few times. And then you read the injury report, and Miss Jackson touched on it. It was violent. I can read it again. So Dr. James Traylor, a forensic pathologist who performed the autopsy on Tamika, testified that Miss Moses died from internal bleeding and injuries caused by repeated blows to her abdominal area. Miss Moses' liver was lacerated or torn from front to back. The vein supplying blood to her intestines was completely severed, and her right kidney had 2 lacerations or tears. Miss Moses also suffered a spiral fracture in her upper right arm, which matches his story of trying to take the key, or when he said he pulled her arm, and abrasions to her left shoulder and left side of her neck, and bruise on her right breast. But then there are testimonies that he did call. He actually called home to, like he said, to try to beg for forgiveness, and a detective picked up the phone, and he had a conversation with the detective, and eventually he did turn himself in. There's no mentions in this report if he had an abusive past, if this was something he had done before. And then you can go on the other extreme side and say, here's someone who beat to death his wife and his mother of his children while they were home, or at least one of them, the baby was home. And then he applies for parole even though he doesn't have a relationship with them, so he puts them through crap all over again. And he should just, for his children's sake, just stay there. You know, you can play it both ways. I don't think he's like the typical sociopath or narcissist, though. I do think he has figured out why he's done it. He grew up in an abusive home. He said he found out his sister slept with a knife. He's got so much rage, and he didn't have a father figure. And people who grow up in those environments, no matter how good they are now, they can become violent in an instant. I think a lot of us have seen this type of things in other people, whether it's friends or and that seems to be what happened to him, except of course it's not something I can understand or relate to or have empathy for. You don't beat your wife to death and then just say, oh, well, I was a drunk and I was abused. You know, that's not where I'm going with this. But I guess where I am going is that I don't think we have seen other cases where it seems almost like they plan it out for a few weeks, or they're in complete denial about what they did, or they tried to cover it up. You don't see that here. So I guess what I'm just saying is that I don't think he checks those boxes of someone who's even trying to manipulate the court system or is a sociopath or is even a narcissist. But again, it's like, I don't want to, I feel pretty, oftentimes I can have a strong opinion about something and this one just tears me up. I don't, I'm very happy with the board not letting him out. But the idea that he would get out sometime, I can understand that as well. Although the idea that his kids don't want him out is something that I need to figure out how to think about that. Some other things to think about in the hearing: the idea that he saved, was it the warden or the captain? So I don't know. Like, was that dangerous thing for him to do? Like, was that going to make him a marked man? Was it something that he knew would give him some type of advantage by doing it? I think there is a difference. If you do it knowing the risks that you might take by doing it, then there's something a lot more to be said, right? If you know that you're going to go and take this crazy guy off of, and it's not so much about, I mean, he looks like a big dude, like he can handle himself, in the sense of getting that crazy guy off of her. So it's, at that moment, was it not so much about his personal risk, but down the road, like, was that going to make him a marked man? Doesn't seem that it did. But I think it would be saying a lot more if it did, right? But that is interesting. I guess what I mean is I don't know how to judge it, how to judge that action. Like, was it really dangerous what he did because of the potential repercussions following it? So I just don't know how to judge that action. And then the idea that he's training dogs, I don't know why Mr. Roche gave him so much credit for that, because that sounds like an amazing job to have. If you're locked up in prison and you get to spend your time with dogs, sign me up for that. I don't think there's anything heroic about training dogs for wounded veterans. The whole act of doing it is wonderful and you're giving back, but I mean, it seems like a pretty amazing job to have if you're locked up. That's like a lucky job to have, except it'd be sad every time you have to give away your dog. That would be sad. Some ways in that he described his crime, it went a bridge too far. Went too far. And how do you feel about Miss Jackson, what she did talking to, giving kind of like the pep talk to the father, to the victims, to her father in the room? She said, basically one day he's going to get out. Forgiveness is not for the offender. Forgiveness is for you. And is that appropriate to tell a father? I've seen Miss Jackson say similar things, but in a little bit different context and different situation. I don't know if I wouldn't want to hear that from any judge. I would say, don't tell me that. This forgiveness is not, I don't want to be preached to. And I don't think anyone should be preached to in that way. It's not the right place. In front of everyone else, I don't know. And forgiveness is for you. It's not for the offender. I think we understand that, but to be told that by a judge in this situation, also the family and support in that room, how they had gotten up in middle of the, I guess right when they knew that he wasn't going to get released, they started getting up on the third vote. That's not cool. Pretty disrespectful. I mean, but yeah, he seemed to really have been a pretty bad dude. He was just had a major drinking problem, was never there for his kids. As his father-in-law or former father-in-law said, he was doing everything. And here he was then accusing his wife of cheating on him. And then he literally beats her to death, leaves her on the floor to die. And then something like 22 years later, 24 years, no, 21 years later. Yeah. He's up for parole. Well, he's up for a life commutation. So he has a life sentence. They changed the law that gives him the ability to reduce his life sentence. That's another thing, though, you know, today's day and age, a lot of people get 25 to life, and this was a second-degree murder, so it is, you know, compared to others, to get just life without parole, that does seem. But anyways, I'm really, I can go every which way on this case. I know a lot of you would just say, no, it's locked up, throw away the key. And I'm not really passionate about saying otherwise either. What you do when you do that, like, I'd be okay with him staying locked up too. Anyways, I feel like I've rambled on way too long. I'll include the links of the different appeals in the description. And with that, I'll let you go.